How many snaps did they run in the 14 personnel?
That's only for us.
100% of the snaps.
What's going on, guys, and welcome into another edition of our rookie rankings. I am talking our top 5 quarterback rankings, post-combine, post some pro days. And this is a really interesting class, especially at the quarterback position. It's one that we might be talking about as an all-time bust or an all-time, like, just sitting in the middle, And so it's going to be an interesting class to see develop, to see where these guys land. But let's jump right into our quarterbacks. Actually, before we do, I want to remind you, you can follow us on Twitter at 14P_fantasy. You can follow me on Twitter at Marco_14P. And you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/14P fantasy, where we can get rankings, dynasty rankings, rookie rankings, tiered dynasty rankings, tiered rookie rankings. And in season, we're going to have a lot more for you. You also get videos a little bit early as well. So please join along on our Patreon, as well as subscribing to this YouTube channel that you are watching the video on right now. All right, so let's jump right in. And our first quarterback on the list is the ever popular Malik Willis. He had a phenomenal combine pro day. He's 6 foot 225, 23 years old by the time the season starts, out of Liberty. And of course, there's the big thing. Okay, he's out of Liberty. He didn't have much competition. That's something we have to take into consideration. It's not a deal breaker for any quarterback, as long as the ancillary things are looking good. And so for Malik Willis, let's talk about the big thing. He is the most mobile, most athletic quarterback in this class it's a landslide. He wins. He is the best athlete of this class, and it's not close. His speed is incredible. His speed for his size is really good, and he is not afraid to he doesn't avoid contact. He has a lot of yards that he accumulated after contact in college. Of course, he was playing at Liberty, but let's keep moving. He has a great release for a guy, especially of his size. His arm strength is phenomenal. One of the guys who has the best arm strength in this class, even though he's only at 6 foot tall, 225 pounds. But there are some negatives. He has some inconsistency problems. He has a tendency to look for the big play a little too often, and accuracy and consistency with his accuracy are kind of things that he needs to clean up. And if he's not going to be able to clean those up, that is going to be a problem. So Malik Willis, he is our number 1 right now, but he has one of the widest range of outcomes in this class, because if he lands on a team that doesn't truly invest in him and develop him, he could be a guy who relies too much on his athletic ability and never quite develops as much as a passer that a lot of people would need him to be a long-term starter in the NFL. So widest range of outcomes, highest ceiling, but we like him as our number 1 quarterback right now because of his talent. I think Justin's got him in a tier of his own. I've got our quarterback 2 on this list in a tier with Malik Willis, and we'll talk about why in just a second. But let's jump into it. Quarterback 2 on the list is Kenny Pickett. He's 6'3", 220 pounds. He'll be 24 by the time the season starts. He is coming out of Pitt, and really, there's a lot to like about Kenny Pickett. He is probably one of, if not the most accurate guys in this class, along with maybe the next guy. But he is pretty athletic. He's not Malik Willis athletic, but he can definitely take the ball and get chunk yardage on the ground if he wants to. He is a good decision maker. That's improved over the last year, but that is a key part of what excites us about his game. And he has a phenomenal release, and his mechanics overall are really good. The ball kind of zips out of his hand, and his throwing motion is clean, and we like a lot of what we see in Kenny Pickett. The only real knock he has is that he doesn't have this incredible arm strength that, Malik Willis has, that some of the other guys in this class have. So really, when you're looking at Kenny Pickett, I see him in the same tier as Malik Willis, because he is one of those guys who doesn't have as wide of a range of outcomes. He could come into the NFL right now, and I think he could truly give us Baker plus without too much help, without too much talent around him. I think the thing with Pickett is that his ceiling is definitely not as high as a Malik Willis, but he could end up being the guy who sticks around in the NFL the longest of this entire class. I think he's got that kind of ability and that kind of natural talent. So if he gets developed at all, if he lands in a place like Pittsburgh, where we know Mike Tomlin is a phenomenal head coach and does really, really awesome with just having a staff that develops their players, he could be a long-term asset in your Superflex leagues. And when QB1 leagues, we'll see. But let's keep moving here to our quarterback 3 of this class. And this is a guy that is really interesting. It's Matt Corral. Obviously, he dealt with an injury in college near the end of his career or college career that really started bumping him down the quarterback rankings. But what we saw from Matt Corral is that he has progressed year over year over year. And he's 6'2", 205, 23 years old when the season starts, coming out of Ole Miss. He is a very good, a very accurate passer. He's got phenomenal ball placement. I think his ball placement is probably the best of everyone in the class. He has improved his decision-making, and we'll have to see a lot of these things continue to improve if he wants to be a long-term starter in the NFL. But if he goes on the trajectory he seems like he's been a hard worker at the collegiate level. And if he continues to do those things, he could surprise a lot of people and end up as actually the QB1 of this class. But he's a decent athlete. He's not going to be just tucking in and running every single time, but when he needs to, he can be mobile. It won't be his calling card in the NFL, but he has that in his tool belt. He needs to really focus on just knowing his limitations when it comes to arm strength. It's good, but it can be lacking at times, and the ball can seem a little bit wobbly coming out. But ultimately, when he's confident, and he usually is, he is one of the guys who can compete with those top 2 guys in this class. And if he continues to take those developmental steps that we've seen year over year for him, and he can carry those over into the NFL, similar to the guys above, he could actually end up as the QB1 of this class. So he is in the top of the second tier for me because he just needs to make sure that he's continuing to develop, because all of his traits are good, but they're not there yet, where I think Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis have some traits that are already at the NFL level. All right, so we're going to keep going here to our quarterback 4. I think Justin actually has Sam Howell as his quarterback 3. I've got Sam Howell, not Justin, as my quarterback 4. Really, with Sam Howell, there is a couple of things that need to get developed. I mean, he is a phenomenal athlete. He's definitely a dual threat quarterback. And he was one of the guys who everyone said, hey, he's going to be the number 1 guy coming out in 2020. 2021 happened, and that's not exactly what we all saw in the tape. And then coming out, this is just going to be something that he's getting associated with Mitch, and he did that last year. And I should say they should not be associated. He's better than Mitch Trubisky. I'm fairly confident that he's better than Mitch Trubisky, but there's accuracy issues here. He has moments of inconsistency, but that's probably one of his strengths. It's kind of in the middle of strength and weakness, similar to the guy we have next. But when I come to Sam Howell, I think he is a guy who has the dual threat ability, but he needs to be able to do all of the quarterbacking things a little bit better. And basically, when you look at his progressions, he needs to learn how to go through his progressions a little bit better, go through his reads a little bit better. This was a problem with Mitch as well, which is probably some of why he's getting associated with him outside of just the UNC connection. But this is part of the UNC system. They kind of stick with really static reads, and that is something that any quarterback coming out of UNC is going to have to learn how to improve on if they're going to succeed at the NFL level. And Sam Howell is not immune to that. His release is fine also, but it's not great. There's things that he can really work on. He does this thing where he pats the ball before he releases it. And obviously my form and mechanics is not good, but he does a weird pat before he releases the ball, and he's got to get rid of that if he's going to do anything at the NFL level. Overall, I think what we're talking about is he just needs to improve on his mechanics. He has some of the right things in place, but he needs to improve on them all really tremendously at the next level. So he's got to find a team that's going to know that he is not a guy who's ready to come in and start year 1. He might have to do that depending where he gets drafted. But if he can take a year at least to develop, fix some of the mechanics, fix some of the kinks in his systems, I think that could help him far exceed where we have Mitch. Right now, he's my quarterback 4, Justin's quarterback 3, and he is in a tier below the top 3 guys we just talked about in Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, and Matt Corral. All right, so let's jump into, our quarterback 5 on the list, and that is Desmond Ritter. Okay, so Desmond Ritter is a guy who took the Cincinnati Bearcats much further than anyone has ever expected them to go. He is athletic. His arm strength is phenomenal. He probably has the best arm strength in the class. Malik Willis is obviously got a cannon, but Desmond Ritter just can unleash a ball from anywhere, from any angle. Arm strength and athleticism are his 2 calling cards. That's the good. The bad is, well, and I should say he also probably is the most NFL system ready, but there are things that he's got to work on if he's going to succeed. Similar to, this whole class. This is why we've talked about this class being maybe a hit or maybe just a complete bust. Accuracy, that is something for Desmond Ritter that lands somewhere between strength and weakness, like we talked about before. It seems to be something where he knows all the right things he wants to do, but because of the fact that he is so athletic, he has the arm strength that a lot of other guys in this class don't have. He thinks he can do more than he can. And I think that accuracy is one of those things that he might be a little overconfident in, and he needs to kind of rein in and work on the mechanics of what that looks like for him. Also, this is kind of similar to what I just talked about. He doesn't always make the best decisions, and that can get him in trouble early. And if he starts making those mistakes early in games, it kind of plagues him the rest of the way. I think Desmond Ritter probably has, I would personally say that Desmond Ritter has a more of a chance to succeed in the NFL than even Sam Howell does. But if you're just coming in right now where they're at, I think Sam Howell has some traits that the NFL teams might like a little bit more. Both of these guys have some mechanic things they have to figure out if they're going to make it at the NFL level or if they're just going to survive at the NFL level, whether that be as a short-term starter or a long-term backup. Ultimately, I think this class is going to be a weird one. If you're in super flex leagues, I get everyone saying Malik is the 101. None of these quarterbacks are top 5 picks to me in a super flex or a 1 QB league. I know I'm going to probably get a lot of hate for that. If you want to take Malik Willis 101, you can, but I think I talked about it earlier. His range of outcomes is just way too large, where I think a guy like Breece Hall is more of a lock to contribute to a team early and often and have a sustainable career in the NFL. Not that Malik can't, but there's definitely some obstacles that he has to get over. Same with a lot of the guys in this class. So if you're in a super flex league and you've got 101 through 103 specifically, I don't think you have to take Malik Willis, especially if you're not desperate at quarterback. If you have no one at quarterback, sure. But if you're not really, really desperate for a quarterback, I would not touch Malik Willis or anyone in this class until after 102 at the latest, or 101 or 102. If you need to take him 103, you can. But to me, I've got Malik Willis coming in at my 104 pick in this draft. Let me know your thoughts below. I hope that you guys enjoyed the video, and we've got tight ends coming out later this week. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you next time. Peace.